A loud boom came from the walls as everything shook. It was rare, but this happened every few years after the performing of the reloading ceremony. The priests started making the horrible screeching noise that they make, and the Voidsmen started shouting at us to do it again, to start the reloading ceremony again. It had all started relatively innocuously a short while ago, about the time it takes to cook a batch of stew for the gang. The word had gone around that we would be performing the reloading ceremony for the cannons. This was strange, as we had already done it once this cycle, but no one asked any questions. Sometimes the priests came down and made strange demands, so no one really questioned it, though they grumbled when I was pulled in with the other cooks. Dinner would be late, if we got it at all. We would have had the stew done by now, and we were meant to have meat tonight, caught by the hunters in the hydroponics decks. When the Voidsmen had turned up a while ago, there was concern that they'd come to confiscate our meat, calling it contraband. Everyone was relieved to find out that they just wanted us to perform the reloading ceremony. Once we had finished the reloading ceremony, they made us stand and be ready to perform it again. We moved the socket back into position to take the shelf to the chamber, and waited. Waited the time it would have taken me to make dinner for the whole gang. The new ones were nervous. They prayed to a god who wouldn't answer, asking him to spare them, but the rest of us knew better. While it wasn't common, every so often the priest would come down and complain about the spirit of the cannon, and the Voidsmen would come down and yell at us until we had done the reloading ceremony, so most of us were used to this. Most of us were born here, and were just wondering when we would perform the unloading ceremony and be allowed to eat, while I worried about how I would have a hungry gang at me for food. When the cannon's voice boomed out of the walls at us, the panic set into those nervous few. The Voidsmen were yelling at us, trying to rush the ceremony, and the priest's angry buzzing tried to drown them out. And then we heard a second voice. It was not the voice of our cannon, but another one. Further from the prow, the Bridgewood cannon was calling out to our cannon. We all stopped for a second, all of us that were born to the Prowwood cannon gang. Our silence was palpable and we looked around, meeting each other's eyes. It drowned out the nervous muttering and crying of the new ones, the screeching of the priests, and the yelling of the Voidsmen. All was quiet for those few seconds, and then we began again. Heave! The cry came out, and we pulled the next shell forward towards the chamber. The cannons were competing. In a contest that we could not fathom, their voices boomed out into the void, and we would perform our duty to aid our cannon in whatever way we could, so that it might triumph over the Bridgewood cannon. We would perform the ceremony tirelessly, until their voices were again silent. I lost track of time in the fervour. We performed the ceremony countless times before the voices of the cannons were quiet, and when they were, we waited with bated breath. Or at least, those of us born to the cannon did. The new ones barely managed to stand, so afraid of their own nonsense they were, of some unknown things outside the hull. The Voidsmen also waited patiently, while the two priests would occasionally beep at each other. As I stood, I closed my eyes and focused. I had been swaying from exhaustion, but I focused in on myself and stilled myself, banishing the tiredness, so that I would be ready when we continued the ceremony. The time dragged on, in relative silence, until the Bridgewood cannon boomed. "Stand fast!" cried the Voidsman. The Bridgewood cannon boomed out again, and then again, before finally the Prowwood cannon, our cannon, bellowed out through the hull in a much mightier voice, and we recommenced the ritual. We were made to stand then, for hours, before we could finish the rituals. It wasn't until after the hull lurched prowward, causing my every sense and fibre to feel and experience purple before my body righted itself, that we were ordered to perform the disarming and unloading ceremonies. I was made to watch as they were performed, with half of a mind on what sounded like a victory for the mighty roar of the Prowwood cannon over the quieter Bridgewood cannon, and half a mind on how I would have to feed all 500 people in the gang as soon as the rituals were over. While I was used to cooking for the gang, we rarely had to compete with such hunger. The sudden extended reloading ritual had taken a toll on the gang. I managed to distract everyone who came over looking for food enough with talk of our victory to let me prepare it. Talk of the quieter Bridgewood Cannon lifted their spirits even to the point when some of the older Voiders who wouldn't usually pitch in to help got involved, making sure that everyone was fed as the food was prepared. Once they saw to lifting everyone's spirits and getting some food for themselves, they left me and the other cooks to fend for ourselves, getting what little was left. The celebration went on for a while, despite how tired the gang was, but it wasn't long before everyone slunk back to their cramped berths, if they even made it that far, ready to rest. Hello everyone, and welcome to my solo RPG channel. This was something a little bit different. Instead of playing a game live, I've instead started playing offline and writing a script. I figured that I'd try something a little bit different, something that might be a little bit easier to listen to, as I toyed with a new idea. I was watching an episode of Adeptus Ridiculous, and they were talking about all of the people it took to load the guns, because they didn't do the whole auto-reloading thing anymore. Basically, if they've forgotten how to repair the reloading thing, it's easier to just get people to do it. Even if the shells are twice the size of a person, or in the artwork, which I think is of a torpedo, bigger than twice the size of a bus, 3 times the size of a bus. The other thing they joked about in that episode was the possibility of the different crews for the different guns forming gangs and competing with each other. And I thought to myself, that is a very interesting idea. I would love to explore it, and it would make a great setting for a game. So I started playing Dark Heresy, and this is what we've got. Now, if you actually have been watching my other videos, you might be wondering, what happened to the Space Hulk game? I found that one of the Wrath and Glory supplements gave rules for generation of Space Hulk so that you could play in a Space Hulk, and was going to play just sort of an exploratory game inside one. Very much a bit of a dungeon bashing thing. I started playing it, and when I went to edit it, I discovered that maybe I only had 5 minutes of audio. 5 minutes of audio from a 4-hour shoot. I was very happy. So I need to work out what to do about that. I do actually have another 2 episodes recorded. So maybe I do something like this for the first episode and then see how it goes. Maybe I just continue on with this. I have already played a second session of this, which I've got a script for it, but I haven't recorded it yet. So maybe we can continue with this and see how people enjoy different things. I'm also interested to know if people prefer the shorter episodes. I think this one's probably going to be 10 minutes after I've edited it, as opposed to everything else on my channel, which is north of an hour. While this channel was originally here to encourage me to actually play solo games, giving me somewhere to put them, it is more rewarding if I'm doing something that people prefer. So if I've got the option of doing it one way and people like that more than doing it another way, as long as it isn't too much harder to produce, if it's too much extra work, then I probably won't do it. You know, if it all gets too hard, then everything will fall by the wayside. But if it's easy enough to do, then, you know, we can start producing something a little bit better and getting more people to watch it back. It'd be very good to hear from other people about, you know, what they think about this kind of thing, or their own experiences with their own games even. In any case, if you've actually made it this far, given that this is the end of the video instead of the start of the video, unlike how I usually do it, thank you very much. I'm glad you've enjoyed it enough to actually listen to the end, or hello if you're just put it on in the background. That's cool too. I know that if I was watching my videos, it would only be as second monitor content, so don't blame you at all. But still, thanks. Let me know what you think, if you're so inclined, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.